Hi everybody and welcome to this other webinar Q&A, and today I'm particularly excited to have one of our keynote speakers on the line who has been doing an awesome amount of travelling of late. I've dubbed him the International Man of Mystery, which I'm not sure if he likes or not, but I'd like to offer a warm welcome to John Lee, who should be on the call. Are you there, John?
Yes, I am. Thank you for having me on here.
Thank you very much for agreeing to take a bit of time out of your day. I know you're busy at the moment. You're running like 5 or 6 events at the moment, and you're going to be taking a little bit of time out to come to our event, the Ultimate Cashflow Conference, next week in London. So I think it would be great just for people that perhaps haven't come across you before, just to give me a little bit of background in terms of where were you when you first decided that actually I want to get involved in this whole property game and start making some serious money from it?
You know, it's interesting, Matthew, because when I first started in property, it all sounded almost like too good to be true. You know, like you hear of people making all this money and you think, come on, I mean, that's got to sound like a scam, right? Or it sounds like, well, if it's so easy, why isn't everyone doing it? And I remember, you know, because my background was I worked in London. I was on a £36,000 job, which most people consider that to be okay. And so what happened from there, I just said, look, you know, this doesn't feel like a job anymore. You know, this doesn't feel like that I need to start doing something very different. And one of the things that I really, in my own mind, said, look, there's got to be a faster way of making money, right? There always is. I mean, why work 8 hours a day for somebody else and have to ask when you can get time off, have to ask your boss when you can have a pay rise, and it just didn't feel right. So, you know, in my mind, I was like, well, I want more freedom. I just want time to do the things I want to do. And so I just thought, well, if I could just make £36,000 in like 6 months, then I could just take the rest of the year off. And that was kind of like my mindset.
True. Yeah.
So I remember looking at and you know, doing some research online. So I was typing things like how to invest in property, how to make money in property, and I came across this book which my friend gave to me. It's called Rich Dad Poor Dad. And when I read it, there was a concept in there that talked about passive income. And when I thought about it, I thought, is that even possible? I mean, like, you don't have to work, but you still get paid money every single month. And one of the things they talk about is the fastest way to do that is to buy property and rent property out. And so I thought, wow, so if I can buy and sell one house and make 36,000, and then I just buy a few more houses to rent those property out and make money every single month, then really, I don't really have to work anymore because these properties will be paying me an income which I don't have to work. But then I thought, there's a problem. And the problem is, to buy a property, you need money.
Yeah, sure.
So I thought, well, how does the banking system work? Well, it's very simple. You go to the bank, and the bank will give you a mortgage. And then for those of you listening right now, you'll probably need a deposit to put down on a house, and then you get to buy the house. And so I thought, well, each house is roughly around 150,000. Right, 150,000, the bank will lend you about about 75%, which meant I had to put down for each property around £35,000. And I thought about it. I thought, well, how much money do I need to make to replace my salary? So at the time, I was making £3,000, and £3,000 is not actually a lot when you look at the tax. Once you take off all the tax and everything, you're left with about what, 2,200.
Yeah, precisely. So it's going to take you quite a long time to save up that deposit, isn't it?
Well, exactly, because my mortgage payments was, you know, on the flat that I was renting, you know, was £800, and then I would have more outgoings. Actually, at the end of the month, I was only left with about £500. You know, which, you know, because I had like fancy cars and all that kind of stuff, and I just thought, if I want to save that money, it's going to take me forever, right? But then I thought, well, how much would it cost? How many houses would I need? Well, if I just had 3,000, if I divide that by, say, 10 houses, if each house can make me £300, then don't have to work anymore. But it still didn't overcome the problem of, you know, 35,000 times that by 10 houses, you need £350,000. I thought, there's no
Sure.
way. I mean, where am I going to get that money from?
But the interesting point you raised there is you had that light bulb moment, and it's like,
Yeah.
you know what, this is potentially possible if I can find a way of doing it.
Oh man, I tell you, you know, like when we were searching and searching for a solution, I mean, the first way I did it is probably the easiest way. And this is some of the things I'm going to be talking about at the event, is raising finance. Like, if you don't have money, people will say, well, John, I don't have money, so therefore I'm not going to invest in property. I say, well, you're going to let money stand in the way of your freedom? And so people that do, people that don't, don't. So then I say, look, there's never a lack of finance. There's only a lack of creativity. And what that means is that you've got to find creative ways to buy property, right? And so when I first started out, I started finding people with lots of money, and I would pitch them in a certain way that got them to give me money to invest in property. And the deal was that we would split the deals 50-50. Good deal, right? So I would go out, I would find the deals, they would finance them, and now we own them 50-50. And so that's what
perfect for someone getting started.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, but then, you know, I had this thing in my mind of, you know, who's going to give me money, you know? And so that was one of these beliefs that I had to overcome. Is like, well, if I could just buy these houses, all I needed, the only thing stopping me is the money, right? But then my next obstacle was, well, how do I get the money? You know, and it's interesting because now when I look back, I think, my God, had I had the knowledge that I have now, for anyone starting, and I think for the people coming to the event, they're so lucky to have so many people who have done this, that in life, you know, most people go to their friends to ask them for advice. But why do that? Because their friends don't, if their friends, you know, could have done it, they already would have done it.
You're right entirely. I mean, I remember exactly what you're talking about in terms of when I read Rich Dad Poor Dad back in 2003. There was no one doing kind of what you or I or other people do right now in terms of education. It just wasn't available. There was a few books out there and bits and pieces, but actually getting access to the information and the knowledge and the expertise was really tough. So give me a few little teasers about your talk and kind of what you're going to be covering. I know you've covered a few, but what are you going to be kind of sharing on the day with people?
Well, from my many years of experience in property, and now we buy property all around the world. We buy property in Asia, we buy property in Europe, we buy and sell property in the UK as well. We haven't touched the US market yet, but that's something that we're looking into. And I can tell you from all the money I've lost in, you know, from mistakes, you know, we've all been there. For those of you listening to this, you know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
There's literally 6 distinct areas that we need to focus on. And if you know these 6 things, you'll be able to buy and acquire property without even using any of your own money. In fact, I actually wrote 2 books about this. You know, one book was called The Step-by-Step Guide to Lease Options, and the other one was called Property Millionaire Secrets, which are now 2 best-selling books all around the world. And, you know, I remember one time when I was speaking on stage with Richard Branson, and there was 10,000 people in the room. And when I taught them the strategy, people would say to me, they said, John, is that even possible? And I said, think about it. If you can find these people and you can genuinely help them, and your intention is to add value to people's lives, that's when you'll make money. And that's how you'll profit from the property industry. Because most people, Matthew, they go into the property industry and all they think about is money. Right? And I can tell you from all the businesses that I have and own and co-own with partners, you know, every single one of them that are multi-million-pound businesses, I can tell you the thing that sticks and is in common with all of them is we come from the place of serving. We come from the place of adding value to people's lives, and if we can do that, then we can help other people move on. That's how we penetrated, you know, Amsterdam and Malaysia, because we saw these pockets in the market where people wanted to sell their property, but they couldn't sell it because either they were in negative equity or they were in a distressed sales situation, and everyone came to us because we came from a place of, hey, you know, if you want us to help you, if you want us to help you sell your property, then obviously there has to be something in it for us. And so our USP, and we had a site, and still have a site called Network Property Buyers and Network Property Investment, where we've literally helped over 70,000 people who are distress selling who need to sell their property. And we are now the UK's #1 site for anyone who wants to sell a property very quickly. They come to that site, and we help them sell their property, and we help them solve their solution on their problem.
Well, I have to say that sounds to me as though this is going to be a really incredible talk, and for people coming to the event, you're really going to be in for a treat. I've heard John speak before. He's been a really amazing speaker. I mean, I know that you're obviously now training other speakers how to speak as well, and to get their message across on stage. So it's going to be a really, really interesting talk. One question I had for you is, obviously, I think you mentioned this earlier in terms of this is quite a good time for people to get started in property. And one question I'd ask you is how are you finding the market at the moment in terms of, obviously had the crash in '08, had a bit of recession going through there. Things certainly seem to be picking up. There's a lot more optimism out there. How are you guys personally finding the market?
It's funny, Matthew. I get this question, every time I'm in a different country, or, when I'm getting interviewed by the newspaper, radio, TV, that's the same question. And my answer to it is, I don't care what the market's doing. Even 7 years ago when the market was buoyant, I was buying properties in London like really cheap, and people would say, how are you doing that? You see, the thing is, when you know how to be the only person on the beach selling ice cream, you have no competition, because it's the strategies in which you use. In fact, you know that most people more people in a recession become millionaires in a recession than they do in a boom. So you asked me the question, is it the best time for people to invest right now? One thing I'll say is this, right? One thing I learned in property is you never wait to buy property. You buy property and then you wait.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so true, and I think a lot of the other speakers have kind of commented on this in terms of, the market is really what you make of the market, and you essentially make your own market through using the various strategies or techniques that they're using. And everyone is, we've got a lot of speakers coming, all experts in different areas, so we're going to be talking about a variety of different strategies you can pursue. But the one thing they've all said is it's how you apply yourself and how you actually make that market your own. Now, one question I've been asking everybody, which is something I'm very interested in as a kind of, I guess, a scholar and just interested in this from more of an understanding of human nature, is you can put two people in the same room, you can give them the same amount of information, the same amount of support. However, you may only have one of them actually succeed. And I think there's a fine line between success and failure, and it's a very, very fine line indeed. And one of the questions I've been asking every speaker, and the answers I have to say have been a variety of different answers, not all of them unexpected, but interesting anyhow, is I find a lot of the reasons why people are successful is because they're working towards goals on an ongoing basis. And the question I'd like to ask you is, what is the one thing that you do every single day without fail that takes you further towards the goals, the targets and dreams that you've set yourself?
Very good question. Here's the thing that I learned about goals and setting tasks. I always look for the path of least resistance, right? So if I know I need to get something done, like most people, they write this task list, like, I need to do this, 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 and this. But the better question you want to ask yourself is, what can I do once that will solve and do and achieve all these tasks? So the things that I do every single day, I'm always looking for leverage. I'll give you an example. Right now, I have, just on my own database, I have over 40,000 active investors on my database. Now, if I were to contact every single one of them by hand or by email, it would probably take me a year, right?
Yeah.
So the leverage point of it is, let's say I need some help. Let's say I need someone who can go around to my property, fix it up, and tell me what the damage is and what needs to be done. Rather than me driving it there myself to do it, I think leverage. Right? What's the leverage? What can I tap into? Well, I can tap into my network. I just write an email, I send an email out to everybody, and then from those 40,000 people, I will get maybe a couple of hundred responses. From the couple of hundred responses, my PA then filters out to the top 10 who are people who qualify. She'll call every single one of them up, filter down to 5, I'll speak to 5. So we always need to do things that are constantly moving towards our end game. Like, what is our end game? Like, what is our focus? And you know, the question actually I ask myself every single day is this: if I was competing against myself, what would I do differently? And there's so many things like this. Like, people listen to this right now, there's things they should be doing, they know they should be doing, but they're not doing. Why?
Yeah.
Because it's the reason, it's the compelling reason. What is it that drives you? Why are they even doing this? Who are they doing it for? You know, so for me, I'm always looking for points of leverage. If I can find, like, for example, let's say a deal comes along. Let's say I had a hotel offered to me, a couple of weeks ago. And, you know, this hotel, it's a substantial investment. So am I going to put my money into that? No, I'm going to find partners. So how would other people do it? Well, they'll probably sit there, scratch their head and not know what to do. Or maybe they might say, well, let's go to a networking event and find people there. Well, me, I just, you know, make a few phone calls. I find somebody who already knows people who's already invested in hotels, and then I ask them to put them in touch with me. Right? And then I may even send an email to a very short list of people who I say, hey, you know, you guys have got a minimum of £1 million each, right? And how much of that would you like to invest in this project with me? So there's so many different things that you can do on a daily basis, but success really comes from action. All you got to do is you need to be consistent. If I want to lose weight, if I'm like 15 stone, and what's the number one thing I can do right now? People say, well, you need to change your diet, you need to go to the gym, you need to do this. No, it's too much. Because when the brain interprets that information, it won't do anything because it becomes overloaded and therefore paralyzes you, and you don't do anything. So my suggestion to people is just make the first step. You know, there's a saying that says, ordinary things done on a consistent basis produces extraordinary results. And that's true. If I was overweight and I wanted to just lose some weight, what if all I did was just go for a walk every day for 15 minutes?
Precisely,
What if all I did was just cut out alcohol or sugar or bread? You know, just these little things, when you combine them, they start compounding. And so, like, again, when I first started, one of the first houses I bought for 85,000, and I sold it for 185,000. And that was just a literal series of doing small things on a consistent basis and not giving up, and then I got that result.
Great answer, and different to other people as well, which is great. And I think if people listening to this series of Q&As listen to all of them, they're going to get some great insights into what successful people do every single day. So thanks for that. Any kind of big dreams out there that you're still kind of wanting to achieve that you've not achieved yet?
You know, my big vision, and a lot of people say to me, oh, John, you're so successful, you know, you're so rich, why do you need to go around the world, like, putting seminars on, and why do you have to charge people? Well, my response to them is this. One of my big dreams is to revolutionize the education system that we have in Britain and in the UK, because my parents worked in a Chinese takeaway, and, you know, for them to work there, the reason why they did that is because they wanted to give their son, me, an education.
Yeah.
Right? And so they slave away, and they get like 1 day off a week. They work from 5 till 12 o'clock midnight. And, you know, for me, I saw my whole family going down this whole road of doing the same thing, right? Because the parents will teach the kids, and the kids will teach the next kids, and generations have the same learnings. But what if our parents taught us, like, whenever we went to ask them for money, we say, hey, Mum, can I have some money? They'll say, instead of saying, go out and get a job, what if they said, hey, why don't you go out and invest in property? Or why don't you go out and raise some finance and flip some deals? Or why don't you go and do some HMO deals? You know, imagine if they had the knowledge to be able to teach their kids financial education. And unfortunately, we don't have the most important thing. Unfortunately, we live in a world run by money. And if we don't learn the game of money, either we get played by the game or we play the game. And so my vision is to have all these different schools, almost like Oxford and Cambridge, all around the world, teaching people financial education, teaching them how to invest money, how to handle money, how to save money. Look, think of it when we were kids. Our parents would give us pocket money, and the first thing we do is that £5 they gave us, we go out and spend it all, right? What does that teach us when we grow up? When we grow up, we're always spending everything we have. We don't invest. And if we can just educate the population and teach this generation, we can literally transform and change generations and generations and generations. Because the times when you wake up and you look at your phone, and your alarm's going off and you hit that snooze button, imagine at that point you can say, you know what, today I actually want to go to work. You know, Matthew, it's all about choice. It's about giving people the choice to do what they want, when they want, how they want. Because I'm going to tell you that from all the people I've seen around the world, it's like they died many times over, but they're still walking around. You know, I was in London the other day. It was crazy. It's like people like zombies and robots. I mean, they literally just existing, not living.
This is so true, and I think it's a phenomenal dream I have, and I'm sure you'll get there with it as well, because I know you're a man of passion and determination. So I look forward to seeing that revolution. So, for those people that want to come along and see John in action and hear him talk about some of these great strategies, there are still tickets available. You can grab your general admission ticket for just £97, which is $32.50 a day. It's a complete bargain for 3 days of intensive learning. That includes access to the full event, all slide decks, a 12-month follow-on support program from myself via a monthly webinar, and 3 other unreleased bonuses: the 6-figure blueprint, HTML black belt techniques, and business builder online classes, as well as all of our great speakers, of which we have 12, all of whom are bringing a special little bonus with them. You can get tickets at tinyurl.com/2014 UCC. There's still some available, so if you want to hear John in action and our other speakers, do get your ticket today. And before we just finish, just to end off with one quick question. If you had one tip that people could just go out today and start actually growing their property business, what would you say it would be?
You know, my advice is always this, is pay for the best advice you can afford to do this, because if you don't, you will lose more time and more money trying to do it yourself.
Great piece of advice. And I think following on from that, by paying for that advice, you're essentially investing in yourself and your business, and you're essentially leapfrogging over everyone else that's trying to do it the hard way. So great answer. So I'd like to thank John for being on the call. Thank you very much. If you want to see him in action, do come along next week and hear his keynote speech, where he's going to be talking about how you can make easily £2,000 to £5,000 a month from property and more. And it'd be great to see you there. Thanks very much. Thanks, John.
Thank you.